I wanted to make a quick tutorial video to talk about the techniques used when doing a short knotless finish on shoulder to shoulder chest belts. This is a knotless finish instead of tying off behind baby's bum or at your waist. And I wanted to run through a couple things that you should be looking for when doing a short knotless finish on your shoulder to shoulder chest belts to make sure that they are safe and secure and comfortable for everyone involved. I have tied wrapped double sling shoulder to shoulder with a short knotless finish. The first thing is to make sure your tucks are going the right way. So a knotless tuck, for it to be secure, needs to go over whatever the weight bearing component of the carry is. The tail needs to go over that first and make a U-turn so that the tail end is pinned underneath. And you'll notice that with this, if I pull on the end that is going towards baby, it's very secure and I can't move that tuck. This side, I've done the opposite way, where I've come up from under my arm and gone under the weight-bearing component first, and then it's kind of making a U-turn just because of gravity, but that second, the tail end is just going over the weight-bearing component. And they look really similar, except for if, let's say baby wiggles and puts some tension on this pass coming up under my arm, that's not secure at all. It loosens right up. So it's not a secure knotless finish. So the first thing is to make sure both tucks are secure knotless tucks. Once you do this, the carry is safe and secure, and you can start working on getting it comfortable. And so the first step when it comes to comfort is making sure that it's not twisted. So on this side, you can see, for the most part, that the top rail coming from under my arm comes up to the outside towards my shoulder and makes the outside rail on the tail coming down my chest underneath. And the bottom rail from the seat under baby, coming under my arm, goes towards my midline, the center of my chest. So it's making this smooth pass up under my arm and over the chest belt, moving as one plane. On this side, you'll notice it's all twisted. And this will happen a lot starting out when you are wrapping shoulder to shoulder carries. When you first start the carry and you do that first half knot to pull the chest belt away from your neck while you do the shoulder flip in the second tuck, a lot of times that half knot just ends up as a twisted mess. And that's fine, as long as your tuck is going the right way. At this point you can just straighten that out. So you just work on untwisting it, starting from under your arm, and you kind of have to roll it around over that knotless tuck and loosen it up a little. But basically you do the same thing of starting the top rail and kind of walking it up towards the chest belt and tucking it down towards your collarbone, and then the bottom rail, walking it up towards your midline and your sternum, tucking it down. And so one thing you'll notice, if you have these not twisted, if the wrong side of your wrap, if it has contrasting sides, is faced out where it comes under your arm, then the right side will face out on the tail hanging down. And if the right side is faced out coming under your arm, then the wrong side on the tail will face out. Once you have these untwisted, then it'll start getting a little comfier, but you may still find that it's, might dig into your armpits a little bit and it feels really lumpy under the chest belt. So for that lumpiness, you want to start with, I'm starting with my thumb under my armpit and kind of walking it up towards the knotless tuck and loosening that knotless tuck a little bit And then working my other thumb into the bottom rail near my sternum. So I've got one rail on each thumb, and I'm just going to kind of walk the fabric with my fingers from one thumb to the other, and use both the fingers on both hands to spread this out evenly. Now I don't have a nice rainbow on this wrap to show, but you can kind of see how everything is very evenly spread out. And now that it's spread out, then I'm going to take the tail end. I'm going to start with the outer rail near my armpit and tighten that rail, and then just go strand by strand across. Tightening each strand so it's snug, and you don't have to be super aggressive about this. The knotless tuck generally is not bearing a lot of weight of the carry, so you just want to make sure it's secure so none of this slack is going to work its way back into the carry. If you have any slack back here behind your back and your baby, you can walk that back towards this knotless tuck. Find that particular strand and tighten that. But you'll see I have this nice and evenly tightened, but also very well spread out over the chest belt. Whereas this one is kind of rolling over on top of itself. It's bunched in more areas than others. There's some areas that are spread out and some that are bunchy, and underneath feels very lumpy. So the one that's evenly spread and tightened is going to be a lot more comfortable than this one. Now this is leaving the shoulder to shoulder tucks, knotless tucks, bunched, which does help keep the carry a little higher for smaller babies. But as baby gets bigger, not only do they not need to be quite as high on your body, you also might need a little bit more support on your chest instead of on the actual shoulder to shoulder chest belt, because I find as baby gets heavier, if I leave these bunched, this chest belt actually just takes way too much weight, and no matter how well I spread it, it's not comfortable. So your last option for comfort is when you go to loosen this tuck to spread it out evenly, start by spreading it evenly, doing your finger walking from one thumb to the other and spreading it out, but loosen it a lot more than you think you should. And then take all of that excess width over your chest and kind of pull it a little towards the center of your chest. You still want it spread out pretty evenly over the chest belt, but you're going to be shifting a lot of that bunching towards your sternum without letting it get too bunchy under there. And then I'm going to start by grabbing the bottom rail behind under my armpit, pulling all that width down, just like making a seat on the back, gathering the width at the bottom rail, and walking that. I'm walking it under my breast, up towards the knotless tuck, and as I'm holding it there to keep tension, I'm going to take the bottom rail on the inside of the tail end and start tightening it strand by strand. I also need to get that top rail a little bit. And make sure when you do the top rail, you're still holding on to the bottom rail under your chest, because it will, if you let go and you start tightening the top rail, the bottom rail just ends up rolling up and you have to redo it anyway. But spread it down, bunch at the bottom. Make sure you don't let it get too bunchy at your sternum along the knotless tucks. And then just strand by strand tighten through the tail. And I find that whereas when it's bunched, you can be pretty tame about how aggressively you're strand by strand tightening. If I want it spread over my chest and I want this to stay spread, then I really do have to tighten this bottom rail quite aggressively. But the top rail, you don't want to, you want it snug, but you don't want it to tighten it so much so that it's digging under your armpit. So normally I would do this on both sides for symmetry. All right, and that is how I spread and tighten short, knotless, shoulder to shoulder chest belt finishes, which I find as a really nice and easy, fancy finish, especially if you use a longer wrap than needed, since I have nice, elegant tails, but a fairly simple finish that's very functional and comfortable.